TI pairs for NT8. Now, you know, our TI pairs indicator is our correlations indicator, which shows you directly on your price chart whether two symbols are directly correlated, indirectly correlated, or not correlated at all. How this works, I'm going to explain very quickly right now. Then we're going to look how this looks like on NinjaTrader 8, which we just released a couple of days ago. Now, direct and inverse correlations. What are these? Well, if two symbols, let's say the SPY and the QQQ, or the ES futures and the NQ, the Nasdaq futures. These two symbols are typically very strongly directly correlated, meaning when one symbol goes up, the other one will go up as well. Or when one symbol goes down, the other one will go down as well. This is what we call a direct correlation. All right. So oftentimes you see this in ES and NQ, SPY and QQQ and so forth. But there could be also inverse correlations. What is this? Well, an inverse correlation happens if one symbol goes up and the other symbol goes down. So there's still a correlation there. It's just in opposite direction. One goes up, the other one goes down, or conversely, one goes down and the other one goes up. We call this an inverse correlation. And then, of course, we also have many symbols which are not correlated at all. Now, these correlations, will they exist in the short term or in the long term? These correlations are visualized by our TI pairs indicator. You can see these little matrix here. And for example, a very high value close to 100 showcases a direct correlation. For example, here between ES and NQ, very high direct correlation. A high value close to minus 100. So again, close to minus 100, and it's also in a red color, shows an indirect correlation. So when we took the screenshot here, for example, GC, which are gold futures, and ES, which are the S&P 500 futures, they were indirectly correlated, meaning when one went up, the other one would go down. Okay, this is what this indicator shows you, whether two symbols are correlated. Now, why is this important? It is important because you don't want to double dip. You don't want to, let's say, invest into symbols which have a high direct correlation, because then you're basically taking the same trade twice, just with different symbols, because they're highly correlated. You want to avoid this because this would go against diversification. What is also shown by this indicator is whether, we have this here, whether a symbol is what we call a leader or a laggard. What does that mean? So for example, let's say two symbols are highly correlated, but for some reason, right now, in the current market state, one moved up more than the other one did. Meaning that the second symbol is a laggard and needs to catch up because the other one was a front runner. This is also shown in this matrix by this little turtle symbol when it's a laggard, or this rocket symbol here when it's a leader. And one way to trade this, for example, is to anticipate, okay, they are correlated. This is going to hold on. One is currently lagging behind. That one needs to catch up. You can trade accordingly, maybe going along that symbol, anticipating that one will catch up and reach the other symbol as well. Okay, so then the correlation will be intact afterwards. Now, how this works on NT8, Niklas is going to show you right now. So Niklas, please take it away.
Yep, sure thing. Okay, so I'll share my screen. Yep. Just sending a request.
Should be able to do it.
Cool. Okay. And by the way, Daniel, once after the lunch and learn, maybe you guys around 4 p.m. or so, I'm going to update the download link. So if you have TI pairs, you could use the same link. I'll also post it in our Discord, but there's a new version that's going to be released with a little update. Okay, so, all right, so here is how TI pairs looks when you first apply it to a chart on NinjaTrader. And actually, I'm just going to put the settings to their defaults. So with the new updated version, you're going to find there's more customization options for the positioning and the styling of it. By default, the indicator is going to display a list of major stocks, and it's going to show 10 of them. It's just a sample list of stocks, and this is the TI pairs matrix here in the bottom left once this data loads. So the way it works, this matrix, is depending on your chart time frame. So I'm on the 30-minute here. It's going to look at a short-term time frame and a higher-term time frame, a higher period time frame. So I'm on the 30-minute. So it's showing us information for correlation between all these different symbols in the rows and columns on the 30-minute and then on the 60-minute. So if we look here, and it always goes from the symbol here, left to right, okay, from the row to the column. So if we look at Google and Apple, we know that in the short term right here, it's short and then long, they have a 90, basically a 92 score correlation, percent correlation. And then on the longer term, on the 60-minute, it's 60.4. On this side of the diagonal on the left, these are the correlation values. So we can see here for Berkshire Hathaway and Apple, in the short term, they're 65 correlated positively, but on the 1 hour, they're actually quite inversely correlated, minus 70. On this side of the diagonal, those are like the raw correlation values telling you if these symbols are correlated or not. On the right side, though, we get these rockets or these little tortoise emojis, which are supposed to tell you if one leads or lags the other. So if we look, again, from row to column, so we start here, if we go all the way over here, this rocket emoji is telling us that Apple tends to lead Amazon in the short term. So if we then look at the correlation values between Apple and Amazon, 90, so they're highly correlated in the short term, Amazon and Apple tends to make the move first. So how you could use that information is to perhaps look at the chart of both Apple and Amazon and say, well, what are they doing? So if I look at Apple, I hop over to Apple right here, and then I open up another chart. So there's my Apple chart. And maybe on this chart, I look at Amazon. I've actually just got Liquidity IQ over on this chart. Wait for this to load. Well, I can then compare the price action. So what do we see here? We can see they are moving quite similarly, but let's say Apple begins to pull downwards significantly. So we drop down to 260 within the next 30-minute candle, but Amazon is still kind of hovering up here. Well, the idea with correlation and leading and lagging is if we have a defined relationship, which we do from the matrix, Apple tends to make the move before Amazon, and they tend to move in the same direction eventually. So if Apple starts to pull down, but Amazon is still holding up, well, that might be a nice short opportunity. And you can bet on using that information to expect Amazon to slowly follow Apple afterwards, because we saw that leading and lagging correlation. So let me look here in the settings. I'm just going to explain a couple of them. So one of the things you can do is say, hey, I only want to show the results if correlated. This helps clean up the matrix. And I can also increase my threshold here. So I only want to see symbols that are extremely correlated with 80. And this applies to the short term. So if I click this, we see now there's even less symbols shown. It's only showing the ones that have at least an 80% correlation, either negative or positive. If I put it up to 90, things are going to get even more tight and even less correlations are going to show. So you can use this information to then find, these higher probability opportunities where things might work out. And the timeframes that are selected, the 30-minute and 60-minute, of course, on stocks, maybe you're not going to be trading on the 30-minute. It's going to adjust no matter what chart you're on. So if you go to the daily, it's going to look at the daily and the weekly if you're something like a swing trader. In NinjaTrader, thanks to the alerts feature, we also have correlation alerts with just a little checkbox here. So if you hit correlation alerts, you enable that. If a symbol was previously, two symbols were previously not correlated, and then they suddenly become correlated, you're going to get a NinjaTrader alert that's going to tell you, hey, these symbols are correlated in the short or long term, and it's going to list the titles in the alert text, the symbol names, so you're aware of which ones this happened for in the matrix. So you could basically run TI pairs on a chart in the background, because obviously it takes up significant chart real estate. You could just use a chart to have TI pairs on it, and of course don't need it on every single chart. One thing I've done here, just to show an example of the usage, and I think I saw an opportunity, but when my NinjaTrader crashed, I'm not sure if I have the exact same symbols anymore. But you can also come down here in the preset symbols. You can just say custom. I want to make my own symbols. So I put in a couple of symbols here, and where I got these was from some generic list of AI chip makers and semiconductor manufacturers, and also AI data infrastructure and hardware stocks. So that's VRT, Supermicro Computer, Arista Networks, Modine Manufacturing. So I wanted to see if there's any correlation between these AI and semiconductor stocks and then the data center infrastructure ones that support AI applications. So if we click OK, the TI pairs matrix is going to update to show us those symbols, and we can see if we can't find anything that's interesting. So what I would like to look for, so one of the things we look for, which I think is an interesting way to do it, is you look for two symbols that are distinctly correlated in the short term, but then they're not yet that correlated in the long term. And then also look for a leading or lagging relationship. So why might this be? So right here, I've identified one. Actually, this is an interesting one right here. Mod and AMD, very correlated in the short term, but actually like neutral or inversely correlated in the long term. So if I come up here and look at AMD now and try to go over to mod, I find out that AMD leads mod. So AMD tends to make a move that mod eventually follows, and they're highly correlated in the short term, but not the long term. So now I'm going to take a look at those two charts and see if we can't come up with some sort of trading idea. And I haven't looked at these symbols before, so there might not be anything there, but let's just take a look. So that's AMD, and this is mod. So what we learned from TI pairs is these two symbols are pretty correlated in the short term. And just looking at this roughly, look at this move right here. This is something like the short term, right? They do look extremely correlated, right? They came up, mod is kind of flagging a little bit more, or sorry, this is mod right here. Mod is coming down a little bit more while AMD is still kind of holding the line and flagging. And we know from the matrix that they're highly correlated in the short term, but in the long term, they're not that much yet. And we know that AMD tends to make the move first. So on the chart of mod right here, you can see, okay, we came down, looks a little like AMD. We pulled up. We know that it tends to correlate highly with whatever AMD does in the short term, but in the long term, it takes it a little bit longer. So on AMD, I can then look at this chart and see, okay, we're making some double bottoms here. Depending on what AMD does, let's say AMD starts to recover up a little bit more through 210. We stop, we start to get out of this range and start to return upwards more. We then might be able to expect the exact same thing on mod in the longer term if that correlation starts to pan out. So here, we're coming up, I'm using liquidity IQ here, but we had a short break. We're trying to regain this level. If AMD starts to hold this level, we might expect that that longer term uptrend here on mod can then continue. Or if AMD starts to pull back and come back down to this support, well, we've then got confirmation that, hey, perhaps this level isn't going to hold up and this short break retrace is going to continue down back to this support. So I hope that was at least a little illustrative of something you can use this for. And another one here, this is actually another interesting one here on mod and ANET. So Arista Networks. So if I open up Arista Networks, what do we see? So we see that in the short term, they look a lot alike, right? It kind of looks like AMD too. It's got that here, boom. That's where that short-term correlation is coming from, is from this short-term move right here. But in the longer term, they're inversely correlated. So we might then be able to assume that this short-term correlation where they're pulling up isn't going to hold up, because in the longer term, they're actually inversely correlated. So if Arista Networks now starts to come down, well, this information tells us mod might start to go up. And if this one starts to go up, mod might start to go down. Do we have any questions, Daniel? I think that was a very, very rough little idea there. But on NinjaTrader, I think these alerts are extremely useful. Nice one checkbox. And version 1.0.1, we're going to be uploading, which allows you to set the location of the matrix and also change the font size.